The convoy died fast, 3 shuttles spinning into scrap metal. Plasma fire chewing through diplomatic hull plating like acid through flesh. Adrian watched it happen from behind a bulkhead that wouldn't stop a determined sneeze, let alone military-grade ordnance. Standard operating procedure for this corner of hell. The pirates knew their trade. Engines first. Life support second. Leave the cargo breathing but helpless. Standard operating procedure for this sector's finest predators. Adrian's atmospheric readings painted the story in hard numbers. Hull integrity dropping. Oxygen bleeding into the vacuum. They had minutes before the math turned fatal. The raiders came through the forward hatch like death wearing combat armor. Kira moved like smoke given purpose. The dwarf assassin flowed through the chaos, compact frame turning cramped corridors into tactical advantages. Adrian had worked with plenty of killers. None of them treated murder like performance art. Her plasma daggers carved elegant paths through the boarding party. Each strike was surgical, precise, beautiful in its efficiency. Professional appreciation. Nothing more. The transport shuddered. Adrian's equipment harness bit deep as artificial gravity stuttered between operational and ornamental. His atmospheric processors were built for installation work, not combat zones. But the environmental readings told him everything about their tactical situation. Life support failing, hull compromised, oxygen reserves dropping. 12 minutes until the math killed them all. A raider burst through the aft access, assault rifle tracking for soft targets. Kira appeared behind him like judgment wearing a shadow's skin. Her dagger found the gap between helmet and neck guard with surgical precision. He dropped without dignity. She glanced back at Adrian. Blood spattered her weathered features in abstract patterns. Amber eyes held the cold calculation of someone who killed for a living. Efficient, ruthless, completely reliable. The numbers didn't lie. Adrian ran atmospheric calculations through his head, cross-referencing consumption rates with probable enemy strength. The mathematics painted their situation in funeral colors. Minutes, not hours. Kira gestured toward the escape pods with one crimson blade. Her expression compressed tactical reality into a single look. 2 pods, 2 people. Simple arithmetic with a body count for an answer. Adrian started moving toward the pods. The next blast waved through them against starboard plating like dice in a cup. Adrian's diagnostic gear scattered across the deck, decades of engineering knowledge reduced to sparking debris. He pulled himself upright, tasting copper and ozone. Kira lay motionless beside the pod access. Shrapnel had found her lower back. Jagged metal fragments punched through armor plating designed to stop small arms fire. Adrian didn't need medical training to read the damage pattern. Internal bleeding, probable spinal trauma, maybe an hour before the biology gave up. She met his eyes with professional calm. We need to move. Pod bays compromised, but secondary launch might be intact. Adrian knelt beside her, running quick diagnostics. The wound was serious, but not immediately fatal. With proper medical attention, she had a chance. Without it, she had statistics. Bad ones. The numbers said he could carry her. Physics disagreed. Combined weight versus escape pod capacity. Acceleration tolerances. Life support duration. The mathematics were brutally clear. 1 person meant 90% survival probability. 2 people dropped those odds below 30%. Bad bet in a universe that didn't offer refunds. Kira's amber eyes held steady on his face. Leave me. Take the pod. Her voice carried the flat certainty of someone who'd made similar calculations before. Professional to the end. No drama, no manipulation. Just cold, tactical logic. Adrian studied her for a long moment, processing variables. He'd spent his career optimizing atmospheric systems, balancing competing pressures until everything functioned in harmony. Life was about finding equilibrium points. The transport groaned. More raiders would be coming. He slipped his arms under her shoulders and lifted. Kira's weight, distributed across his frame, felt manageable. Her people were built for efficiency. Compact, dense. He'd carried heavier atmospheric units through worse terrain. The comparison felt wrong. The physics worked. "What are you doing?" Professional confusion colored her words. "Atmospheric engineering. You maintain system pressure by not abandoning critical components." Adrian carried her toward the secondary launch tube, boots finding purchase on deck plating that sang death songs with each step. The ship was dying around them, but they still had options. Limited ones. The pod bay looked like a war crime in progress. Blast damage had twisted primary launch tubes into abstract metal sculptures, but the secondary tube showed green status lights. Minimal damage, functional systems. Adrian set Kira down beside the pod hatch, checking vitals, pulse steady, breathing controlled. She was managing pain like a professional, compartmentalizing damage to maintain operational effectiveness. Standard assassin conditioning. The pod's interior was designed for solo survival. Safety harnesses for one. Life support calculated for individual consumption. Environmental controls optimized for single-occupant use. Adrian reconfigured the atmospheric settings, rerouting oxygen flow and adjusting pressure tolerances. The modifications would reduce safety margins to tissue paper thin, but the numbers still worked. Barely. This is tactically unsound. Kira's voice carried professional frustration. Your survival probability drops to unacceptable levels. Adrian finished the atmospheric recalibration and helped her into the modified safety harness. Close quarters forced uncomfortable proximity. Her compact frame pressed against his chest. He could feel her heartbeat, steady despite the trauma. Maybe, but atmospheric systems work best when components function together. The launch sequence initiated with mechanical precision. Adrian felt familiar pressure changes, accompanying emergency atmospheric transitions. Training took over, monitoring environmental readings while managing trajectory. Staying alive through applied physics. Kira remained conscious throughout launch, amber eyes tracking his movements with professional assessment. Cataloging responses. Filing behavioral data for future reference. Even wounded, she remained what she was. The pod's navigation system painted their destination in amber text. Bengray Station. 46 hours at current trajectory. Medical facilities. Atmospheric processing equipment. Everything they needed, if the numbers held. Kira's breathing had stabilized, but pain etched lines around her eyes. Her people were taught endurance, function through damage that would incapacitate other species. Professional conditioning reinforced by cultural imperatives. Survival through applied stubbornness. You could have survived alone. No accusation in her voice. Professional curiosity. Adrian monitored atmospheric readings, fine-tuning oxygen flow to maintain optimal conditions. The modifications were holding. Barely adequate. Functional, probably. But atmospheric engineering teaches you that some calculations matter more than others. She considered this for several minutes, amber eyes studying his face with target assessment intensity. When she spoke again, her voice carried different qualities. Less professional distance, more personal consideration. My people would call this honor debt. Obligation created through preserved life. It requires a response. Adrian checked the trajectory against known shipping lanes. They were broadcasting emergency signals, but rescue could take days. He'd need to manage environmental systems carefully to maintain life support that long. Mathematics with a deadline. No debt required, just good atmospheric engineering, but something fundamental had shifted between them. Professional distance had eroded under pressure of shared survival. The compact pod forced proximity that made pretense impossible. Truth through applied claustrophobia. Kira's hand found his wrist, amber fingers tracing pulse points. Medical assessment, probably. Monitoring vital signs for stress indicators. But her touch lingered longer than professional necessity required. Honor debt exists regardless of acknowledgement. It shapes behavior, creates complications. Adrian felt her pulse through the contact point, steady and strong despite injuries. The pod's atmospheric systems hummed around them, maintaining a delicate balance that kept them breathing. Everything functions together, everything in equilibrium. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled in ancient patterns, indifferent to human problems or alien obligations. Inside their pressurized sanctuary, something new was taking shape, something that couldn't be calculated with environmental equations. The navigation system chimed softly, updating estimated arrival time. 45 hours, 36 minutes. More than enough time for atmospheric systems to find optimal operating parameters. More than enough time for honor debts to evolve. Adrian adjusted oxygen flow one final time, ensuring maximum efficiency. Mathematics were solid. Engineering was sound. They would reach Bengray Station with minimal safety margins but acceptable survival probability. Everything else would be calculated later. Kira's amber eyes had closed, breathing settling into controlled rhythms of enforced rest. Even unconscious, she maintained the disciplined posture of a professional. But her hand remained on his wrist, contact that spoke to deeper calculations than survival. Adrian settled into his own rest cycle, monitoring atmospheric readings through peripheral awareness. Outside, stars continued eternal dance, marking time in cosmic measures that rendered human concerns insignificant. Inside their refuge, time moved to different mathematics. Biological rhythms, healing processes, slow accumulation of trust between two people who'd chosen partnership over probability. The pod's life support hummed mechanical lullabies, maintaining precise conditions that kept them alive. Atmospheric engineering at its finest. Everything balanced, everything functional, everything exactly as it should be. When Kira woke 6 hours later, her first action was checking environmental readings. Professional habit overriding personal considerations. Amber eyes scanned atmospheric data with intensity once reserved for target assessment. Oxygen levels are optimal. Carbon dioxide scrubbing is efficient. Temperature regulation is stable. She nodded approval, then met Adrian's eyes with something approaching professional respect. Her hand remained on his wrist, monitoring the pulse with medical precision that didn't explain the gentleness. You recalibrated everything perfectly. The modifications shouldn't work with this efficiency. Adrian checked the trajectory against the navigation plot. Bengray Station grew steadily larger on sensors, promising medical facilities and atmospheric processing equipment. Safety, recovery, return to normal operations. Atmospheric systems respond well to proper attention. Most people don't understand the calculations involved. Kira's smile carried genuine warmth beneath professional assessment. Fingers traced patterns across his pulse point, mapping cardiovascular responses with thoroughness of someone accustomed to reading human physiology. Perhaps, but most atmospheric engineers don't factor honor debt into their equations. Station traffic control hailed their pod with standard emergency protocols. Medical teams standing by. Recovery procedures initiated. Everything proceeding according to established parameters. But Adrian found himself reluctant to acknowledge transmission immediately. Their small sanctuary had become something more than survival equipment. It had become a space where professional distance dissolved into something more personal, more honest, more complicated. Kira's amber eyes held steady on his face, reading expressions with precision once used for target identification. When she spoke, her voice carried professional certainty tinged with personal consideration. Honor debt requires acknowledgement, response. It creates obligations. Adrian finally activated the communication array, confirming approach to station medical facilities. Rescue proceeding smoothly, everything according to plan, everything exactly as calculated, except for variables that couldn't be quantified in atmospheric equations. Maybe some obligations are worth calculating differently. The pod's docking sequence engaged with mechanical precision, guided by station traffic control toward Medical Bay 7. Their journey was ending. Their calculations were just beginning. Outside, Bengray Station rotated slowly against the star field, atmospheric processing towers reaching toward void like mechanical fingers. Home, safety, return to normal operations. But normal had acquired new parameters, variables that couldn't be optimized through traditional engineering approaches. Kira's hand tightened briefly on his wrist as docking clamps engaged. Gesture of acknowledgement, recognition, professional respect evolving into something more personal. Honor debt acknowledged, partnership calculated, variables redefined. Medical teams were waiting as their pod's hatch cycled open, emergency procedures executing with practiced efficiency. Kira was transferred to medical gurney with professional speed, injuries assessed and treated according to standard protocols. But as they wheeled her toward the medical bay, amber eyes found Adrian's one final time. The look held promises that couldn't be quantified in atmospheric equations. Obligations that transcended professional necessity. Honor debts that had evolved into something more valuable than survival probability. Adrian watched medical bay doors close behind her, already calculating their next meeting. Mathematics were complex, involving variables he'd never considered before. Personal factors, emotional considerations, partnership dynamics that couldn't be optimized through traditional engineering approaches. But some calculations were worth pursuing regardless of complexity. Some atmospheric systems functioned best when all components worked together, and some honor debts were worth embracing, even when they complicated every other equation in the process. Station atmospheric processors hummed around him, maintaining precise environmental conditions that sustained life in the void. Everything balanced, everything functional, everything exactly as it should be, just like partnership when the calculations were done right.